Hello and welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming today on this beautiful sunny afternoon in Glasgow. We've been so lucky with the weather this week, may it last. Thank you, Philip, for our first public event that we are cooperating with between Reboot the Future and EcoCiv. And thank you to our panelists for coming. We're very excited and looking forward to hearing all you have to say about transformation. Nowadays, there's just so much to remember on how to behave politically, socially, environmentally. We have to be so conscious about how we speak and what we do. Politically correct, we all know that. There's a lot of do's and don'ts that we have to remember. So at Reboot the Future, what we try to present is a very simple principle to help you in a simple way know how to behave in the right way. We have a modern day version of what some people call the golden rule, which is treat others and the planet as you would wish to be treated. There's a lot that I could say about that, but I'll try to keep it brief. Historically, it's been around a long time, thousands of years. Politically, it's not left or right because it's the core of being human. Culturally, we see it all over the world, and it's in all religions, it's ancient philosophers, it's in the indigenous cultures as well. Why? Because it is the core of being human. It's in our hearts from our birth. And yeah, we learn it as children from our mothers and our fathers because we are always told not to hit other people when we're growing up because you don't like to be hit, right? But somehow we stop talking about it. And what we want to do is have people remember it. It is shared by mammals. And what we've learned more recently is that it's even in forests with trees, they actually live the golden rule as well, which is such a beautiful affirmation of this principle. And what I love really the most is that neuroscientists have proven that this is what makes us happy. And we get those happy chemicals in our brain when we're caring for other people. I just love that notion. So our modern version is treat others and the planet as you would wish to be treated. We want to include the planet because traditionally the golden rule, the do unto others as you would have them do unto you is about our human relations, but we really need to think about this in terms of all life. It can help us make the right decisions, as I said at the beginning. So it really begs us to ask the question on a daily basis, do we want to be hurtful or do we want to be helpful? Do we want to be the predator or do we want to be the healer? Do we want to dominate nature or do we want to live in harmony with nature? Do we want to be the one that's shouting and screaming or do we want to be the peacemaker who's trying to collaborate? So lots of questions to ask on a daily basis. There's 3 requirements to live the golden rule. The first one is listening. We do believe that there are core values that we all share, ways that we want to be treated, ways that we want to treat others, such as honesty, generosity, kindness, dignity, these kinds of things. But sometimes we need to listen more carefully because not all of us want always the same thing as someone else. So we do need to listen. And then we have to have courage because sometimes we need to step out of a tradition or a religious training or a corporate atmosphere to stand out for this principle. And then, of course, the golden rule pleads us to do or don't do, treat or don't treat. So it's about action. So listening, courage, and action. Don't want to lose my bot here. At Reboot the Future, we organize conversations between leaders, between students, between different generations, between sectors as well. We like to get people talking about the deep things in their lives, their values, getting to their core feelings and values, and of course, trying to understand what the Golden Rule is really asking of us. During COVID, we held a whole series of online conversations in various sectors, such as education and the arts, finance, that sort of thing, to capture the lessons that were being learned during COVID. And we captured as well the common values that were coming out of this. It was just really astonishing how much we all shared from these diverse sectors. We ended up preparing a declaration, which we call Values for Life Economy. There's a bit more information on that panel over there. And from both of our websites, the EcoCiv website and the Reboot the Future, you can find a link to the values of the life economy, which explains actually more fully what the Golden Rule is. I co-published a book a few years ago, which was the beginning of my journey on Reboot the Future, called Imaginal Cells, Visions of Transformation. And it really, the purpose of the book was to illustrate that the Golden Rule is applicable to all the issues of the world, which is why I was asking you those more complex questions that go beyond kindness. We called it Imaginal Cell because the imaginal cell is the cell that's latent in the caterpillar that holds the vision of the butterfly. And I won't go into the whole metaphor, it's very beautiful and very inspiring, but the most important point about this is that when the caterpillar is in the cocoon and decaying, the imaginal cell that was latent comes alive and finds the other imaginal cells by emitting a common frequency so that they can find each other and cluster. So we believe that this common frequency is the Golden Rule. And what I've been living for the last 5 years is finding all of the other people who are and Jude, you're a great convener of these imaginals. She's found a lot of them and bringing us together. So if more and more of us live this Golden Rule, we will change the world and have a beautiful butterfly world. So now on to the panel. And Philip, I believe you're going to uncover from these 3 imaginals how they have transformed themselves, but also how they are transforming others around them.
Early in COVID, Kim Pullman and her team began gathering global leaders to have private conversations, to talk together about these deeper experiences of their lives, and to talk together about the core values that drive their transformative work in the world. For the first time now, we want to begin to bring these private conversations to public audiences. It's my privilege to introduce the 3 panelists, and we're going to dive right into it. First, on my far right, Stephen Vasconcellos, a systems entrepreneur with deeply multicultural heritage and background. He's worked in more than 50 countries, meeting several dozen heads of state, hundreds of ministers, thousands of business leaders. Stephen co-founded the NGO Reboot the Future with Kim Pullman, with its mission to promote a more compassionate society. He also launched SALT, a magazine for changemakers, and co-authored a book setting out a bold vision for change. Imaginal Cells, as you heard, Visions for Transformation. As you will hear, Stephen is a nature lover who draws heavily from indigenous wisdom. He also believes that transforming the role of business is critical to healing our planet. His current mission is Positive, an initiative that's growing in the nascent field of regenerative entrepreneurship, which he'll tell us more about. In the middle, Katie Rowberry. Katie has over 10 years experience in the NGO sector, working with foundations, governments, and global donors.
Her previous roles include leadership at Save the Children, Action Aid International, and most recently, Restless Development, where she led funding teams, developed capacity across organizations to work with funders, and developed partnerships around the world. Katie is now head of strategic engagement at RAP, a UK-based charity that promotes sustainable resource use through product design, waste minimization, reuse, recycling, and reprocessing of waste materials. RAP is huge. They work with governments and businesses in 6 continents to create a world where resources are sourced and used sustainably. Katie leads RAP's engagement with funding partners, identifies opportunities, creates new partnerships with foundations to support RAP's work in UK and globally. And finally, to my immediate right, Dr. Thomas Brühn. Tom is a physicist who has been leading transdisciplinary projects at the Institute for Advanced Sustainability Studies in Potsdam since 2012, focusing on the relationship between humankind and Earth systems in light of the Anthropocene. He established and led their famous program, A Mindset for the Anthropocene. A Mindset for the Anthropocene, or AMA for short, showing how the cultivation and qualities like mindfulness and compassion can contribute to sustainability. Tom also designs and investigates science-based co-creative processes in political decision-making. He now leads the research group Transformative Spaces and Mindsets. Before joining IASS, Tom researched semiconductor nanostructures. You could have predicted that. In Berlin, Rome, and Marseille. A trained facilitator, he's on the executive board of the German chapter of the Club of Rome. Let's dive right into it in this conscious conversation. Tom, since you're closest, why don't I ask you, working at AMA, you worked in the movement from sort of inner values or inner experience to outer action in the world. Can you just describe why that movement? Why would a physicist care about that inner dimension?
Totally obvious, right? In a way, the simple answer is out of frustration about the limitations of science. I joined this institute in 2012, and I thought this is such a place where many inspired people come together, but the experience was what they do is talk about all the precious knowledge that they hold. And that's for sure inspiring, but on the other hand, I was frustrated because I didn't feel that this knowledge really is grounded in something that changes in the world. So,
thanks. So I feel that frustration was what drove me to explore what is needed. If it's not the knowledge that can help us to really change the way we are present in the world, what is it? And since then I'm on that journey of exploring how can I help myself and other humans to experience and feel and be what we are talking about. Trying to create that link is, I feel, what guides that journey of a mindset for the Anthropocene.
Steve, your work actually also has a focus on inner experience. Could you build on what Tom just said?
Absolutely. I was listening very attentively.
Lift your mic up a little bit.
I was listening very attentively there to what Thomas was sharing, the different perspective, approaching it from a physicist's point of view. Absolutely. I mean, my gateway to this world is indigenous wisdom, and I believe that essentially we can't make the shift unless we make the personal, individualized shifts one at a time. And so, yeah, there's a huge invitation for us to get into this transformational journey, and perhaps let go of what's held us back in another paradigm, holding us back in another paradigm, in order to be part of what's emerging. And for me, it's indigenous wisdom that we are embracing that can allow us to make the leap into that quantum leap into the future.
Could I ask each of you to do something risky and describe one of these transformative experiences? We've talked about it in general terms, but at a personal level, could you, maybe just starting with Tom and moving across, take a minute or so to describe something that has been transformative in your own life so we can see how this works between us.
Yeah, something comes immediately to my mind, and that's a moment from the beginning of our project. Internally, we were hosting a small meditation group at our institute, and the three of us that were hosting this group felt, for us, it's so crucial to cultivate mindfulness and compassion as an origin and source for our care about sustainability. But nobody else seems to talk about that. And the transformative experience was, at some workshop, we just spoke it up. We just raised the question, like, how come that we're here all the time talking about governance, about technology and so forth? We are just physicists. We have no clue about compassion, you could say academically, but we sit with that. How about you? And the transformative experience was people came to us after the workshop, not directly, but after the workshop. This is exactly what I worry about, but I can't speak it up. If I speak it up, I'm kind of the esoteric weirdo or the yoga auntie, you know? It said, I lose my legitimacy, I lose my credibility. How is that? That this deep human aspect of being compassionate and connected does not have a space in where apparently the decisions or the real world processes for sustainability are. But that experience of we are not alone with that, that's a deeply transformative experience for me. It took a long time for us to say, let's just speak it up. We have no answer. Yes, we are researchers, but we can't provide the answer. But we want to raise the question. We sit with it. And then so many people share that question.
So cool.
Yeah,
That's so cool.
Thanks for the question. It makes me reconnect to that experience.
Yes. Katie, can you think of something?
Yeah, what you said about just speak it up really resonates with me, because anyone who knows me knows that I'm a talker by nature, but there's still a moment where you get like a rush of adrenaline and a feeling in the pit of your stomach where you think, do I say this or not? And my real passion, aside from climate and sustainability, which is what I work on in my professional life, is women's leadership. And it's not a mystery to me why the statistics on there are hardly any female CEOs exist, because I'm a mother of two small children and I am aware of the realities of what it takes to do a senior level job with that in your life. So I recently, so the issue I'm passionate about, I joined RAP 9 months ago, like new person in the organisation, thought, okay, shall I speak up about this or not? And I have, and I recently convened an event where I shared my story and my experience of trying to find a better balance of childcare with my husband, sharing 2 maternity leaves, having my first director role at Restless Development when my oldest son was 1 year old. I shared that in a really personal way. I convened an event with my RAP colleagues, and I thought, is this going to resonate? No one wants to hear my life story. That was all in my head while I was talking about it, and the response was completely overwhelming. Then male and female colleagues, and also female colleagues who didn't yet have children, but thought that it was in their future and were already making career choices, self-selecting out of leadership tracks because of that. Contacted me after the event and said that it had really resonated with them and helped them. So that's really given me that momentum to not just talk about it to my husband and my friends and my close colleagues, but to begin to talk about it more widely.
Beautiful. Steve, where does the idea of transformative experience take you?
Oh my goodness, so many moments. For me, it's been transformation after transformation after transformation. And essentially, I didn't realize until I was much older, but I was born an empath, and so incredibly highly sensitive. And so, just learning to live with that, and putting that in a box that I could take out into the world and use more effectively, and contain that rather than let it run me was transformation. So sort of a backwards reverse engineering of transformation, but essentially more recently I had a very disempowering experience, and that committed me to the path of empowering others and lifting up, linking up to and lifting up in order to bring out the best in people. And so it's really given me an embodied experience of what it is that we're fighting for at this moment. At the very heart of the climate justice movement, at the very heart of all of these converging crises that we are facing, is an inequity of power. And so that shows up in lots and lots of ways. In many ways, very often there's a cognitive dissonance around how that power is exercised. Often that can be exercised in a soft power way, just as much as the hard power. It's not always so aware or it's not always front of mind in the people that are exercising it, because it's just taken for granted. And so becoming aware of that allowed me to step into more embodied space with the change that I represent today. And so in this nascent organization that I'm now working in with a different group of colleagues, we go to great lengths to empower each other, to invite everybody in the room to bring their whole selves, and always to look to the potential of the people that we're working with, so that we can move forward together.
So you guys have told powerful transformative experiences that you personally have gone through, but we haven't talked at all about how that's related to values. Values like Kim's description of the golden rule, or values for a life economy. Maybe I'll pick on you as the PhD here at the table and ask, what is the relationship between individual or group transformative experiences and the core values that people live by? Like, how do we understand that connection in general terms? That's a hard question.
For a semiconductor PhD. So I answer more from the facilitator experience. The challenge is that values, in my impression, and also the golden rule, those may be cognitive insights that are precious to have, but they may not resonate with what is our embodied experience. What is it that I enact, often unconsciously? We can talk about non-duality of nature and say, we are all so connected and so forth, but if I cannot sit in this room and feel a deep connection with all of you, something that may not be speakable, then I cannot enact the corresponding values. It's a real challenge, I feel. Values can be something abstract, but they can also be the expression of a deeper embodied experience. And that's what I'm interested in. And sometimes I witness people holding up the flag for certain values, but what you're enacting in this very moment does not resonate. So I very much care about providing a space where experiences can be made and shared, so that the values it's not necessary to talk about the values, because they just emerge in the collective action.
That's beautiful. Where does that take you guys? Does that movement from those kind of core experiences you both just described to the values that you live by, does it work that way for you?
Yeah, so for me, I think it is really important that, so for example, if you think about a group of colleagues or a workplace, it's really hard across a staff group, especially for more junior staff members, to speak up and bring their values to the workplace and live by those values in their job, because they don't always see it modelled in a brave way by leaders.
Absolutely.
And that doesn't have to be, I don't think, as radical or as extreme as we think it does, but it has to be authentic. It has to be beyond these are our values document, in my view. But you have to see it, and you actually need a tiny amount of that to really push you forward. Yeah, that would be my contribution. You need to see it modelled, I guess.
Absolutely. I think that we all have a responsibility to lead by example. And those of us who choose a path of servant leadership and wear these values have an even greater responsibility to pull those who are laggards into this emergent space. And I think that this is also the story of imaginals. You know, these imaginal cells that become active and you know, as the caterpillar cocoons, they then spring into action, and then they group, they start to find each other, and then when they have reached some sort of critical mass, proliferated into different parts of the dying caterpillar, they then send out and agree a common signal that pulls them all together, and you know, at that point they use the dying part of the caterpillar as their fuel to fuel the transformation of the butterfly.
Can I ask, can each of you name one of these values that arises out of your experience in the world, what Tom called your embodied experience? Could you name one that feels like it has that relational connection?
Yeah, for me, it's the sense of if you feel that you can act, try. So it doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to have all your ducks in a row. You don't have to have like got to the end of your thinking, but just try, put it out there and start. And yeah, that attitude started in childhood for me because of my gran, born in Scotland, born in Glasgow, 91 years ago, sadly died last year, but she was really the start of my journey of thinking that what happened in the outside world isn't just something that's happening to other people. It's real, and she would envisage that attitude in her small granddaughter as relating to the climate emergency, but she took me on demonstrations. She started to make me think that action was possible.
You were trained from the beginning.
She would have loved COP in Glasgow.
Yeah. She would have been with the protest marches outside.
Yeah, I would have. Yeah, I mean, I went.
Can each of you name a value that is really central and experience-based for you?
My goodness. Go for it, Tom.
I feel the deepest value that I hold maybe is just a sense that all life, all existence is in itself beautiful and precious. You know, I can't argue much or describe it much more. It's just that profound sense, whatever is, just the fact that it exists connects it in a state of love to me in a way. And if I may connect that to what you said earlier, it's at the same time a struggle for me, because that includes a lot of life, a lot of manifestation that I may experience as problematic or painful. Because you spoke of the leaders and their responsibility, and I feel even people who do not manage to live in coherence with their values, like myself, I mean, I cannot always live up to what I hope I would embody. We are part of a system that is transforming, and we are part of structures that incentivize certain action over others. I even feel love for the people who fail in that struggle every day, you know, and it's strange, but at the bottom of all of that, I always end up with, yeah, that is life, and I love it.
Yeah. Where does that take you?
Well, that's just, I mean, it's hard to come to add to that because it was so beautifully expressed. So thank you so much. Yeah, it's messy. This is, you know, especially at this moment in time, you know, because, you know, we're living with one toe in some emergent new paradigm that we don't have full visibility on yet. And yet, you know, we're still carrying all of the programming and, you know, all of the structures and, you know, psychological and otherwise, psychological, societal, you know, all the things that we may perhaps even aren't fully aware of, that live inside of us, that we're sort of growing out of. And yeah, this is a particular challenge to the messy side of showing up at this particular moment. So yeah, where does it take me? I'm with you. You know, I think from the earliest age, I didn't know the word then, but I was a hierophant, you know, a lover of Earth, a lover of Gaia, and yeah, we have a vocabulary around this today, but we didn't have so advanced a vocabulary when I was a little boy 40, 50 years ago. So, just being in awe. I grew up here, on the other side of the coast in Fife, and just being in awe of the seasons, of the stars, of the, I used to live I used to sleep in a bedroom with a massive big skylight. And, I just, as a little boy, fall asleep watching the stars. I was just amazed. And here, they say we have 4 seasons in one day in Scotland. Look, it's almost summer in Scotland here today. But, that's going to change very, very fast. The shape and feel and texture and experience of those seasons as they shifted was very pronounced here. Being an empath, feeling into the rain and the fog, and the sun and life. It's it's just very pronounced, and being in the mystery of all that is, and being part of this incredible.
Beautiful. So now,
system.
in our last 15 minutes, what I want to do is to talk about you as change makers. We've learned something about your experience, we've learned something about your core values, and I want to know how it fuels the work that you're best known for. I really would, so maybe I'll start with Katie, because you could choose any of the 4 organizations you've worked with, but something where you're involved in making the kind of change that addresses the climate crisis, then gets us to that point of sustainability, what we call an ecological civilization, humans living with diversity and equity and inclusion, with justice, driven by the golden rule, and not disconnected from nature, but tied in with her in this deep way that you all are describing. So if you take one of the projects that each of you is involved in, and help us see how it grows out of this experience you've described to us and these values.
Yeah, so a large part of what RAP does is influencing sustainable lifestyles in individuals. So we run a really well-known food waste reduction campaign in the UK called Love Food, Hate Waste, which you may have heard of. I realised when I started my job at RAP that I'd been following Love Food, Hate Waste for 3 years on Twitter, but not RAP, so there you go. But the point of that is that in the face of COP, in the face of climate change, what is the feeling that many people in the general public get in the pit of their stomach when they see the coverage of COP? And probably the answer to that is powerlessness, dread. And the danger of that is that it makes people switch off. So the message, the thing that really connects me to RAP's work is the message that climate change is personal. And the extremely knowledgeable technical colleagues back at RAP HQ work really hard to quantify and prove and provide practical roadmaps to show that individual behaviour change amongst the UK public makes a measurable difference to emissions. That is the core of our work. So changing the way that you interact with textiles, changing the way you interact with the plastics you use in your life, and changing the way that you buy, consume and dispose of food does make a difference. And I suppose moving to an organisation in RAP 9 months ago that is really full of like amazing technical detail experts, but on a personal level, being more of a big vision person, that's been really interesting to get into the detail of like, but how does it actually work? How does it actually change things?
So interesting, because your situation sounds like Tom, surrounded by all these German physicists,
Yeah.
right? Who may not be in touch with a bigger vision. I hear some resonance between your 2 situations.
What a question you've asked. It's really tough, so for various reasons. First of all, I have no clue what I'm known for, or if I'm known for anything.
I was thinking the same thing.
Right.
You said that.
At the moment, how I would describe my practice, I feel I'm shrinking in a very precious way. I feel I'm emancipating myself into my own smallness. What lies behind that is you use the word changemaker, and that gives me an uneasy feeling, if I'm honest. I feel I cannot make any change. And people speak of changing the world or changing the climate and so forth. I can't change anything. I try to live my path and grow into that smallness of that path and be coherent in my existence. But I feel I have to let go of the notion that there is a world to be changed. It's very tricky for me, honestly, because I do deeply care about the state of this whole planet. Like you described when you were a child. When I was a child, I looked at the poster of the Earth from outer space. And I wanted to be an astronaut. I thought, I want to see this beauty. And I studied astrophysics, but never became an astronaut. But I still hold that picture in me. And at the same time, I have to let it go. Every moment, I feel like I can't change that world. On the contrary,
I think
I
that's
love-
a really common struggle with climate change.
Yes.
The way people conceptualize it, that it's so hard that it's really easy to just kind of to almost preserve your own like resilience, to switch yourself off from it.
And it's paradoxical. You know, there are so many paradoxes in all of this work. You know, that we you know, it's all fractal. You know, we can hold it, and you know, being humble and having humility is absolutely key in my view to unlocking some of these deeper, more profound secrets.
if I may add another minute, you know, what I also feel what I identify as a root cause of the situation that I experience as problematic and painful is the nature of human action to transgress boundaries of life that we are connected with. That can be other humans, it can be the non-human life, and so forth. So this invasive, transgressive nature. So if I follow the idea of being a change maker, like scaling up the best idea and so forth, I feel I'm kind of reproducing that idea, like becoming bigger, 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 and then if everybody just wants to have the best idea and become bigger, 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 it's the same again, I feel.
Isn't it that, you know, it's that Gandhi quote about being the change that you want to see in the world. It starts with us. You know, let's not get too lost in
Or the one from my Glaswegian Gran about if you feel you can act, just try.
Absolutely, and it starts here. And you know, there's Jane Goodall, who's marvelous, says something along the lines of, you know, if you're struggling with the notion of, I'm completely paraphrasing it, changing the world, and how daunting that is because it's so huge, you know, just try focusing on what you can do, and keep doing that, moving one step at a time.
That's been a real lesson for me in the women's leadership space. The thing that I'm particularly interested in is the balance in families around caring for children between parents and how that impacts on the number of women who end up in positions of power. And my husband and I have been on a bit of a journey where we've now twice taken up the underused shared parental leave in provisions that are available in the UK, and I've had some real like transformational moments which I'm trying to then bring out into my working life with my colleagues, like moments of severe realization for him about what it actually means to step away from your job for a number of months at a time and not be able to check in, or because you'll be too busy with the baby. You know, that's something that every woman who's ever taken maternity leave knows, that fear. But yeah, we had a real turning point moment when he faced into that too. So that's really shown us that just trying to step back from what we were conditioned to believe is the right way to set up a family, and trying to like design our own way to do it has been big. And it's been big for us as a family. It's changed our whole lives over the last 6 years. But it's I'm kind of on a journey now of trying to talk about that in my professional life and share that experience with other people, because so that sort of illustrates the power of like conversations about something, stepping back from something and thinking about it differently, because I think that's what's missing for many women. An open conversation about like, I would quite like to apply for this big job, but there's assumptions made about childcare here, which we need to like go back to the drawing board on. I think lots of people really struggle to do that, and we definitely have not got a perfect solution. So sorry for anyone who's looking for a perfect solution. I don't have one, but we've tried to at least confront it honestly, which has been amazing.
I was just going to add to that, recognize this evolution, this moment, is an embracing of the feminine principle, and so how we treat our mothers is, goes to the very heart of, and how we treat women, it goes to the very heart of this or these crises. But I did have something else I was going to add, but it's completely gone.
That's been a huge driver for me as a mother of two sons. But when I was pregnant with my first child, I just had in my head that he was a girl, because I am a feminist and I've been like reading about feminists, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna have a little girl feminist. It's gonna be amazing. I have t-shirts with feminist written on them. It's gonna be cool. And then at my 20-week scan, they were like, congratulations, it's a boy. I was like, oh, okay. And then I had a second boy, so now I'm outnumbered. I live in a house with 3 men. That has been the sort of journey that my husband and I have gone on together around him parenting and sharing the load differently to the way that his parents did it. Has been, to observe that has been amazing. It's made me think that it's arguably more important to raise boys and men who see that balance in both their parents than it is girls. So,
that was the point, actually. It was this shift that we're living, this embodying rather, is one of moving from doing to being. Yeah, and that's also paradox, because the two live in should live in cohabitation with each other. We can't really be unless we do things to enable that. So that's how I see it, and I see it as an emerging balance, or finding a new harmony between the sacred feminine and the sacred masculine.
Yeah. What should I add? But I felt while you were speaking, maybe there is something like a response to your original question in me, that is feeling okay with being afraid, and allowing myself to be so imperfect and so vulnerable, just to be human. In this journey, I am a child of a culture that has created lots of pain and suffering in this world to human and non-human life, and I'm part of it. I am it. I embody it. And I think my journey is only about allowing me to be what I am, not having to be more. Yeah. And then stumbling forward step by step. Fortunately, connected with a few other people that support each other. And that takes courage, I feel that. Growing into that courage to be incomplete, imperfect, and vulnerable. I think that's my response to your question.
I think that's what everyone's doing in the Blue Zone at COP and in the media and everywhere else.
Say more about that.
Yeah.
That's not what the press thinks.
About the Blue Zone. Yeah, I've been locked in the Blue Zone for what feels like 3 years, but it's actually 3 days since Monday. That's what everyone's doing in the Blue Zone, is trying to confront extreme discomfort about the looming emergency, and that comes out in lots of different ways, and it doesn't always work, and it's highly imperfect. But I think that is really is key. We all have to just learn to feel really uncomfortable, because the climate emergency is just off the scale serious.
Are you saying that the people who we think of as the important people in the Blue Zone feel the kind of attitude Tom just described?
Oh, no, I'm not definitely.
I thought for a moment.
Yeah.
I'm thinking.
I thought, which Blue Zone have you been?
To be clear, I am not being in the leaders' negotiations. I'm pretty important, but I'm not that important. I've been milling around with the observers and the delegations in the sort of outer bit of the Blue Zone, which feels honestly like a really busy shopping mall on Christmas Eve. There's hundreds of people all trying to have conversations, all trying to do things. Yeah, so I guess it's nice to feel we're here at a historic COP. That's really cool. Aren't we clever? But I think it is really important to I was trying to say that it's really important to just allow in the extreme levels of discomfort, and not try to. I'm an optimist by nature, so my first instinct is to shut the door on that. Be oh, that's uncomfortable. I only want to talk about the good stuff. But I've really learned over the last few years that you have to explore it, unpick it, understand it, be open to learning.
I was going to say, so I had this, I originally, I was sort of back and forwards about whether to come to COP, because I recognised that it was going to be a circus. And so I decided, no, I'm not going to have anything to do with it, because it's not where I want to focus my energy or energies, which I felt were best utilised by focusing in on the bigger picture and the intentionality around this particular moment. Of course, there's a lot of that going on, but there's also a lot of frenetic, emergency type energy over the crisis. Of course, there's a crisis, but crisis is also opportunity, and there's a seed of a new future within every crisis, and a transformation that can't always be KPI'd. It can't always be managed from a doing perspective. And so, I want to hold the space for the shift in being that is emergent. And of course, some of the doing will be very useful, to get us out of there. But I think that the true opportunity of this particular moment is a quantum shift in reality. And that might take place over several hundred years, maybe longer. But perhaps we started it several hundred years ago already with the Renaissance. And so, these things are happening on scales that our tiny little human minds perhaps don't have an easy window on. And also the other thing about transformation is that it's unlike change, regular change. You can't manage it. You have to let go of the safety of one side of the river and jump in wholeheartedly. You've got to jump in and get wet, and it's messy. So if anybody here has had a moment of great challenge in their personal lives, they'll understand that there's a moment where you understand that you have to let go of what you know is secure and safe, and take a leap of faith. Okay, you can't stage manage that. You can't even predict what the outcome is. That's real transformation. Is letting go and surrendering to the moment. You can't create a set of SDGs around that. However, the opportunity is much greater than the SDGs. The opportunity is transformational beyond what our tiny minds can grasp onto.
That's brilliant. You actually already answered what is the closing question, which I wanted to know: how will you do your living in the world, your areas of responsibility, differently in light of this conversation? In light of the experiences we started with, in light of those deepest values. And Steve, I could not imagine a better answer to the question, which had not been posed yet, than what you just said. And I'd like to invite Katie and Tom also to close.
Yeah, I was actually kind of simultaneously agreeing and also feeling like my recent working life it's been quite satisfying to get into the detail of the how. Get into the machinery and be like, how would this actually work? And it's still messy and imperfect, and you have to just accept that.
It's paradoxical.
And it's really tempting to get into things must fit into boxes, and there must be an effective roadmap or whatever they're talking about in the blue zone and stuff. But it's been really, really satisfying with RAP to expand my instinct to just talk in big picture terms and get into the detail of how does manufacturing a piece of plastic differently to what we do now make a difference? How do small changes in the way we buy our weekly supermarket shop drive big change? I found that really satisfying. I've learnt loads and it's really pushed me. So I guess I want to continue more of that. It's a strange thread from going on a demonstration with your inspirational grandmother to learning about the detail of the plastic supply chain, but that's where we are. That's what needs doing. So, yeah.
That's fantastic.
We are opening such a beautiful big box here. I'm looking forward to continuing this conversation with you. For me, that quantum leap that you described might be shifting towards a state of trusting all those who are busy in the blue zone, in the green zone, in every room of this building, everyone kind of being on their journey and doing their contribution.
All those that are outside as well, I mean, who are not connected with this.
Yes.
There are many millions, many millions working tirelessly for systemic change.
But for me, that's a quantum leap. I didn't grow up in an experience where I can say I can trust those who are in power, whatever power may be in that context. Yeah. And being in the blue zone, we are offering a small reflection space, and I realized how many people are really attracted to the deeper human connection. And at the same time, you have all that buzzing of voices around all the efforts and so forth. I think they all come from a deep, genuine, good intention. There may be a few people who come from a very different state of mind for whatever biographical or whatever historic reasons. But the vast majority, I believe, is coming from a good, genuine intention. My quantum leap is to move into trusting all those people with whom I'm not connected immediately. And that's, I feel, a big shift.
Steve, Katie, Tom, you did an amazing discussion, as if you were three friends who had talked for years and years about these topics, and you brought them to the surface for us in such a clear way. What I especially love is the way that they deconstructed the idea that a few privileged change makers are enough to make this planet different. They have the quantum leap, I think, is to honor the millions and millions who are not present, who are not inside the blue zone, also the more than human life forms. And it takes us back to Kim Pullman's metaphor with Steve of the imaginal cells. Those who find each other in places around the world, who begin to live by a deeper rule, a golden rule, and who live by values that lead us toward a living economy, a life economy, a regenerative economy. I think that's a takeaway for me from this session. Please join me in thanking the panel and their presence today.